What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to another video. Today I'll be looking at another 5 games list. This will be the 5 worst horror games. Now, horror is an amazing thing if you can get it right, but if you get it wrong, it can go so wrong. So today we'll be looking at the steaming piles of shit that people have tried to pass as horror games. Now, I see a lot of people out there say that indie horror games are bad, but I think any game that's free, you gotta lower the expectations a lot. These will all be AAA horror games, where there was actually a whole dev team trying to make a good horror game, and failed miserably. So let's just get right into it. Now the first game is Dino Crisis 3. This is the game that most fans say ruined the series. Now one of the main problems with this game is the camera. On the platforming sections, it's almost impossible to judge the distance, which will result in a lot of falling to your death. The game also suffers from really repetitive gameplay. The combat can get really dull after a while, and the enemies do so much damage to you, you'll definitely get pissed off once or twice. If you play it nowadays, you probably really won't like it just because of the old school gameplay, but even back in the day, people did not like this one. So if you ever do play this game, hopefully you come out with a non-broken controller, because you'll definitely be raging a little bit. Let's get right on to the next one. Now this next one is Aliens Colonial Marines. This game showed a lot of promise when it was first announced, and the first reveal trailer looked amazing, the graphics looked crazy. But once the game came out, everyone realized how unfinished and buggy this game was. And the footage that they showed at E3 was actually not what the game ended up looking like, so a lot of fans felt duped on that one. This game suffers from just generic combat. The shooting feels dull, like there's no real kick to any guns. The aliens are really dumb, they just kind of charge at you while you blast them away, which would be fun if this was a completely new idea. But this is an aliens game, and the aliens are actually supposed to be pretty intelligent, which this game definitely does not show. Basically, this game was a huge disappointment to anyone that played it. You could play through it nowadays and maybe just get an average game playthrough, but for what it promised, it definitely did not live up to the hype. Now this next game is Shell Shock 2 Blood Trails. This was a first-person shooter released in 2009, and it's actually a Vietnam horror game, which is a pretty unique idea, but it was just executed horribly. Now remember, Crisis was released 2 years before this game, and this game was also released the same year as Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. And if you see the gameplay, this game looks like straight dog shit for the time. So you can't blame those graphics for being old. Now this game suffered from a lot of bugs, controls were horrible, there was a problem with the aiming, and the hitboxes also seem to have a problem, it's hard to hit enemies. And on PC, the quick time events are almost impossible to get by, I'd say they're almost glitched. The horror parts of the game aren't actually all that scary. And the rest of the game, which is mostly an action-based shooter, is just plagued with horrible controls and, like I said earlier, just a shit ton of bugs. And honestly, the whole playthrough, it just kind of seems soulless. Like the dev team was just throwing this together last second or something. Now, a lot of people that actually like the game say that it gets better as you go on, but the first like 6 levels are just so bad, you'll probably just quit after that. So if you want to torture yourself, you can get this one, but I'd honestly suggest you stay clear of it. Now the second to last game on this list is Amy. This was a survival horror action adventure game that was released in 2012. Now this game had a lot of hype when it was announced. It showed a lot of promise, the concept looked really cool. It almost looked like a Silent Hill type game, a Resident Evil type game. But once it was released, people started to see the abundant amount of issues, technical wise and story wise in the game, that just made it a slog to play through. The voice acting was very bad at some points. The character animations looked horrible. There's also a lot of lagging going on, which is never good for gameplay, especially on a console game. You can't even fix that. The checkpoints are insane. Sometimes you can lose up to like 2 or 1 hours of gameplay just because the checkpoints are so far apart. There's honestly just so many issues. I could be talking all day about this one. The AI control with your little companion is dog shit. And if you look online, there actually are quite a bit of positive reviews, but all those reviews are just saying, oh, it's only $10 now, or some dumbass shit like that. Basically, this game mostly suffered from poor game design and shitty graphics for the time, and it just killed everyone's hopes once they got their hands on it. Now this next game you've probably never heard of. I don't think anyone's heard of this, I can almost guarantee that. It's called Druna Morbis Gravis. Now, This game, I don't even know why somebody spent time on making this. If you just look at the fucking footage, this probably could be in the tier of worst games of all time. And if you look at it, it just looks like dog shit. This was released in 2001, the same year as Halo. Half-Life was released like 2 years before this. This literally looks like a PlayStation game from the 90s, released in 2001. The game suffered from horrible controls, shitty music. There's also like a half-second delay where if you press a key, the game will register, which is just horrible. That should only be saved for multiplayer games, and this is a single-player game from 2001. Now, I don't know if they just put a girl with big titties in it would sell, but this shit is just horrible, and it didn't sell at all, and that's very good. Honestly, like half of these cutscenes look like they should belong on the hub and not on a fucking game. Now, as of right now, this game is actually unplayable. It does not work on modern systems, which just shows the shitty-ass coding it probably had for back in the day. Probably could barely run on the systems back then. So luckily, even if you wanted to try this out, you probably couldn't, which is a fucking good thing if you ask me. That's it for the 5 worst horror games of all time. If you enjoyed the list, please like and subscribe to the channel. If you already are subscribed, then you're a real one. Go ahead and put ideas in the comment section for other 5 games lists. I bet some of you guys can come up with some crazy ass shit. But other than that, that's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.